for those who are unable to join us today at noon. They can watch it later at their convenience.
All right, sounds good.
Okay, and Lori is at this point is going to mute everyone. When it is your time, if you are one of our speakers on the agenda, you can unmute yourself and then.
Barb, you're actually muted, so nobody can hear you.
Thank you. We now have a co-producer. Zach, thank you. Just to recap, if you didn't hear me, we will be recording this meeting. It'll be available later on YouTube. Lori did mute everyone. I forgot to unmute myself. We are going to have, if you have questions for Mike, during the course of his presentation, you can just type them in the chat room and I will read them to him and he can answer those. Well, with the business out of the way, we're going to start our meeting. I would like to welcome everyone to the 26th meeting of the Rotary Club of Park Cities. I am Barb Jeffries, this year's club president. We are going to actually ask if anyone has any joys or concerns. If you would please unmute yourself before we go to Carl and he will give us the invocation.
I just have a quick joy. I just have to say that, I'm with Kyle. It's going to be a while before we get our shots, but what a great thing to hear about so many members getting their shots. What an amazing accomplishment of our world health people and getting shots in the arms of our, Rotarians and obviously people across the world. It's so relieving to hear. It's been such a dark winter and I know we've got more months ahead, but shout out to all the health people that are doing all the good work. And, thank God we're all here. And it's just great to see everybody.
Thank you, Zach. I second that. Thank goodness for all the researchers that work so hard on those vaccines in an amazing time period. Well, with that, we are going to turn this over. We're going to have back-to-back here. We're going to have the invocation and pledge given to us this morning by Carl von Bieberstein, followed by Mark Kasher doing a tribute on our marketplace advertiser portion. And then Kyle will be up to talk about our RCPC Foundation. All right, Carl.
Thank you, Barb. If you all would bow your heads and pray with me, please. Oh God and Father of us all, thank you for everyone attending this virtual meeting today, for each mind and heart that feels the presence of the many homes each picture on our computer screen represent. We thank you. Only you truly know what we are setting out to accomplish today. We have an idea, a vision, hints, and daily instructions. We have talents, abilities, and time to work. However, only you can see in perfect detail the end of every beginning, every project, every season, every life. Nothing is ever in vain, for even mistakes and missteps are used for good. Your righteousness transcends all our efforts and understanding. Forgive us for our pride, the pride that puffs us up and the pride that threatens to unqualify us. Strengthen our confidence in who you have made us to be. Set us free from comparison in order to work together efficiently. Bless this meeting today, all those present in our various locations, as well as the lives of those we will encounter afterward. Ready us to make every moment count in your precious name. Amen. And now if you'll place your hand over your heart and join me in the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Wonderful. Thank you, Carl. Mark?
As Barb mentioned, today's marketplace advertiser is Herb Berkman, who unfortunately passed away last December. But we wanted to do a quick tribute to Herb to thank him for his sponsorship of the Hub. So Herb joined the Rotary, our club, in April of 2007. He was sponsored by Steve Herman. he's had a marketplace ad since 2009 when President Philip Bankhead was last president. He was an economist. He had an economics consulting firm providing expert testimony and analysis to law firms and other clients. Not sure if any of you guys know, but he was an adjunct professor at SMU for 13 years as well. And last year, when I asked Herb about renewing his ad during the pandemic in 2020, he said, "Of course, I'll renew. Got to keep the economy moving forward, and I want to do my part." So while an official club memorial is going to be done at a later date, we wanted to take this opportunity to thank Herb and honor him for his support of the hub. We always know his memory is going to be a blessing.
Thank you, Mark. Kyle?
Yes, absolutely. So a quick update on our foundation funds. And first, just wanted to say, give a special shout out and a happy birthday to Nolan Duck and Mark Farrell this week, who both have birthdays this week. And so right now, if we look at first the RCPC Foundation Fund, we were sitting at about $2,300 in donations. And if we look at the Bonton Clinic Fund, we're 56,100 to date. So we have had, it's been a tough time. We've had substantial contributions made, but I'd like to challenge everybody. If we could find 10,000 between now and June for the RCPC Foundation Fund, I think that would be, that would put us in great shape. So that's my challenge, and that's the update. I appreciate all y'all's support.
Great. Oh, I love having a challenge out there, Kyle. Great idea. All right, that's great. Okay, well, I have a couple of announcements before we get to our speaker. First, we're going to talk about the upcoming speakers, what's going to happen in the month of February. We've got Amy Lewis Hoffland will be here next Friday. She's a senior director at the Crow Museum of Asian Arts. She is, and then following her on the 19th, Robert Wolonsky, the Dallas History and Heritage Galleries. He will be here to speak. Bill Sleeper is the program chair of the day and was able to get Robert for us. And then we'll wrap up February, again, another Zoom call, all three of these, with David Munson. And Scurry was able to get him to talk with us about positive solutions to climate change without restricting oil and gas. So that's going to be great. We have some stuff to do this month, actually, on your calendars, which is fun. They are all virtual. February 8th which is Monday night. Jeff Sheehan and Susan Harris are going to be doing the program team club-wide brainstorming Zoom call at 5 o'clock. As you know, all of you are members of the program committee team. And we have maybe 3 or 4 openings between now and the rest of the year. But we brainstorm ideas because we're going to need to start filling July forward pretty soon. February 10th is the board of directors call at 8 in the morning. As a member of the Rotary Club, you are welcome always to join us to a board meeting if you'd like to. And then on the 18th is the PCR Connect Zoom call. It's at 7 in the evening. Zach Davis and Holly Hollenbeck are the co-chairs of PCR Connect this year. So it's a chance to visit and build some fellowship, even though it's virtual. Well, I'm going to take this opportunity now to introduce our speaker, Jeff Sheehan, as our program chair of the day.
New member speech.
Oh, whoops. See, I need my producer here. I skipped the new member speech. Sorry, Mike, you have to hold up for a few minutes.
No problem.
Tiffany Richmond is on the call. We are so excited. Tiffany is our 10th new member this year. This is so cool. Daniel Jabrinsky is her sponsor. And Tiffany, we're going to spotlight you and tell us a little bit about yourself. Yay.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for the opportunity to tell you a little bit more about me. I was born in Germany to a military family, but I have lived in Texas most of my life. I currently live in Grand Prairie near Jopo Lake with my husband of almost 23 years, who I met 25 years ago outside on a payphone. And this is somewhat of a running joke between my friends, because when they ask me, how do you meet a good man? I always tell them, just go find a payphone, which, you know, is not as easy as it was back then. We have an 18-year-old daughter. Her name is Chandler. She is an honors student at Texas A&M University. And thankfully, she is able to attend online due to the COVID crisis. We like having her nearby. It's been good for her. We have a Maltese poodle mix. Her name is Diva. She's about 10 pounds and she happens to be my husband's best friend. And if you know my husband, you'll know why this is funny, because he's 6'5". So they're quite the pair when you see them walking together. I earned my degrees later in life, and because of that, I have been very passionate about education, specifically causes that help to encourage students to pursue their education while they're in high school instead of waiting as an adult, which I did because it proved to be very challenging. Something I've been a part of for the past 3 years is the P-TECH initiative. And for those of you who may not be familiar with it, it's a program that collaborates between industry partners, institutions of higher learning, and high schools. And the ultimate goal is to expose students to diverse career opportunities, which they may not have heard of given their circumstances. I, for one, was the first person in my family to obtain an MBA. So I always like to encourage students to just get some sort of educational foundation, whether it be a certification or college. And so that's one of the things that I'm definitely passionate about. I've worked for Encore for more than 20 years. I've truly enjoyed it. This position I'm in now as an area manager has been probably my most challenging and yet rewarding, because every day is a new opportunity to tackle a new challenge and meet people in the community, such as everyone on this call today. I'm really looking forward to engaging with you further in a post-COVID environment once we get on the other side of this. I too am very excited to hear about everyone that has obtained your shots. Congratulations. I imagine I'm going to be in one of the last groups to get mine, but you all bring me encouragement. I'm not so afraid now to get it. Thank you for sharing your stories. So with that, I'm just going to say again, thank you for the opportunity to be here, for Daniel in sponsoring me, for Keita Hobbs for bringing the Rotary to my attention and causing me to be a part of this great organization. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Tiffany. And you're right. We look forward to meeting you in person one day soon. There are lots and lots of service opportunities in the club, and you're going to find some place to plug in, and it's going to be great. I would like to, at this point now, I get to introduce our guest speaker today, again brought to us by Jeff Sheehan as Program Chair of the Day. Michael Mata was born in Houston, attended Texas Tech, go Raiders. He also attended Sam Houston. He's been married 17 years, has 2 kids, a sergeant and a 26-year veteran of the Dallas Police Force. He's worked of those years, he worked 15 in the patrol division, 4 years as a uniformed drug task force, and 6 years as defensive tactics instructor at the police academy. So Michael, I understand that you hold an important position with the Dallas Police Association, but I don't know what that is. Could you tell us a little bit about that, please?
Absolutely. First of all, let me please thank you all for having me today. Barb, it's good to put a face to a name. And Jeff Sheehan, who invited me, happy birthday to you. And thank you for having me, y'all. Let me tell you a little bit about myself. I am a 26-year veteran of the Dallas Police Department. I'm a sergeant in patrol at Northeast Division. I work deep nights. So if you see these bags under my eyes and the kind of vampire look, it's because I work 1 a.m. to 9 a.m. every day. And then I come in and I work at the DPA after that. I've thoroughly enjoyed my 26 years on the department. I've done an array of things from, like it said, many, many years in patrol. I've worked at Southeast, I've worked at Central, I've worked at North Central, I've worked at Northeast, I've worked at Southwest. So I've been all over the city in the capacity of patrol, and it's been very rewarding. I've also have worked in a uniform drug task force very early in my career when I was had a lot more hair, a lot skinnier, and a lot faster, and a lot lighter at that time. I did worked at the police academy for 6.5 years. I was the lead defensive tactics instructor. I co-authored all our training manuals. So I was the use of force expert for the department. So when we would have trials or when the department was being sued or we were countersuing, I was the expert that the city would put on to testify for the city. And then after that, I had a stint in an undercover capacity in major crimes. And what I did there for the most part is I bought or sold anything stolen or legal. Mostly I did guns and 18-wheeler thefts, high occupancy merchandising. So that was different. I did that for a few years, and then I got promoted and I went right back to patrol like most people do. So again, I've had a very rewarding career. During that time also, I've been a part of the Dallas Police Association, not only as a member, but this is my 4th year as president of the Police Association. And before that, I was a vice president for about 3.5 years. And so altogether, I'm working about 7.5+ years. It's had ups, it's had downs. I'm sure some of y'all have seen the news. I've had great moments and I've had not so great moments, like in everybody's career. But let me explain a little bit about the Dallas Police Association and exactly what we are. The Dallas Police Association was actually created in 1952. And a lot of people like to say we're a union. And it's pretty funny. If you watch the media, when we do something great or something they deem as great, we're called an association. When we do something that maybe isn't so great or they deem it's not so great, they tend to call us a union because, unions are a dirty word in the South. And we are an association. It's against the law, actually, for any civil service to be a union. And it should be. Police officers, firefighters have no business or should never want to in any way strike. We have sworn, we have taken an oath to protect the public and serve citizens. And you don't do that when you want to do it. You do it always because it's your calling. And so we are an association. We roughly have about 2,700, 2,800 of the 3,100 officers are a member of the Dallas Police Association. You are not required to be a member of the association. It is completely optional if you choose to be. And to be honest with you, the reason there really is an association, and a lot of people don't understand this, is that we provide them legal coverage. That's the number one reason why any officer belongs to an association, is because of legal coverage. And you might ask, why would a police officer need legal coverage? Well, and we all know that there may be that small percentage in our career that we might have to use force. And unfortunately, sometimes that might end up being deadly force. In my career at the police academy, everything I taught, 95% of everything I taught in the defensive tactics room or in the use of force rooms had nothing to do with deadly force. It was that 5 to 7% of the time in your whole career that you might have to pull your weapon and possibly use deadly force. And unfortunately, that 5 to 7% is where the Dallas Police Association comes in. So let me give you a little example of why you would need legal protection. Let's say I'm answering a robbery call, robbery in progress at a business. I go to that business. I see the front doors open. Myself and a couple of partners enter into the place to search the place. And we find somebody in there who then turns and fires a weapon at us. And let's just say, hope not, knock on wood, but let's say that person fires and strikes me twice, injuring me or hitting me in my place. I return fire, shooting the suspect and causing either serious bodily injury or death. let's just say I caused his death by shooting him. At that point, I'm investigated for murder. Even though I think all of you would agree that that is a 100% justified shooting, that it was done in the color of my badge, of my appointment and the position as a Dallas police officer, we are still charged with murder. That means we still have to go find an attorney, and that means that we still have to go to the grand jury. So even though we followed policy and procedure, even though we fell well within Chapter 9 of the Penal Code, even though I was shot twice and I returned fire, I am still charged with murder, and I am required to get my own legal protection. The department does not provide any sort of legal protection whatsoever, even when we are in the action of our duty of our job and follow policy to the complete 100% accuracy of it. We are still charged with a crime, and we still have to go out and get our own legal assistance. And unfortunately, that legal assistance, because of the time that it takes for this to go to grand jury, it can go anywhere up to $100,000 to $200,000 for a single case. So although less than 7% of the department even ever gets in a officer involved shooting, there's always that possibility. And if you don't have that legal coverage, we can't provide it to you. So if you're not a member, we can't provide that legal coverage to you. So we're almost like an insurance policy. And you want that insurance policy to be there when you get in an accident. And so I have had the far majority of officers that have go the entire career, whether it's 30 years, 40 years, and have never fired their weapon and have never needed the legal assistance of the DPA. But then again, I've had those individuals, those officers who maybe in their career of 25 years have been in 2 shootings. And if it wasn't for having a membership within the police association, they would have lost their house, they would have lost their pension, they would have lost anything they've saved, and they probably would have been, bankrupt. So that's the main reason for the police association. We also do barter with the city in meet and confer process for labor issues, and mostly that is just our pay contract. But that is really more just the city side and us. We sit around the table and we try to make the best deal possible. And we were very, very fortunate this last year and a half ago when we came up for contract that the city recognized that we were about 900 officers short. And it was a major cause that had violent crime and crime increasing throughout the city. We were losing officers at an exorbitant rate. We averaged about 225 officers on average. Well, in the last 3 years, we had been close to 400 to 420. So we were just hemorrhaging officers who were leaving for other cities that were paying much better. They would only simply have to drive 10 minutes more east or 10 minutes more west or 10 minutes more north, and they would get a $15,000 to $20,000 pay raise. So you had these young officers who, our average officer now comes into the department about 28 years old is the average age, where when I was hired 26 years ago, the average age was 22 to 23. So now that we're pulling our recruits at a much higher age, 28, but they're coming in with a wife or a husband and kids. And so if they're offered a better compensation package at another city that is only 10 minutes away, it's very hard to tell a young family not to do so. So we were losing recruits at a historic rate. Almost at 25 to 30% of every class was leaving within the first 2 years. And so I'm glad that City Council saw that was a huge problem that we needed to address it. And we finally did address it. And now we used to be number 12 out of the top 15 cities in the DFW. We were ranked number 12 in pay, and we have finally moved up to about 7. So at least we're competitive. And I think that's all that the police officers really want to be, is just competitively paid with the market. We don't have to be number 1. This city of Dallas has a lot of responsibilities. And public safety takes a huge piece of that budget, and we understand that, but we just need to be competitive. So I'm glad the city was able, with the partnership of the Dallas Police Association, to sit down and find out what was best for the city, what was manageable for the city and its long-term success, and manageable and successful for the Dallas Police Department. Some other things we do. We're here for those catastrophic instances for officers. When officers are shot on the line of duty, or they're having issues at home, like a wife has cancer. We have an organization called the Assist the Officer Foundation. And the important thing about the Assist the Officer Foundation, we never want to make an officer choose, do I come to work to pay some bills, to pay the mortgage, or do I stay home and care for my wife who has cancer? Or do I stay home and care for my children who are injured? You shouldn't have to make that choice. And so we help supplement their pay while they're going through that catastrophic event. And we do that through all fundraising. The Assist the Officer Foundation is a 501c3, and we do everything through a lot of organizations just like yours, golf tournaments, barbecues, you name it, we've done it. Bingo Purse, which was a huge success, which before that I've never heard of before, but women love it. And we're able to raise money. And last year, between our Assist the Officer Foundation, we also provided confidential counseling. As y'all know, 7/7, we lost a historic, on one day, we lost 5 Dallas officers in one day within 11 minutes. And they were shot and killed. One of them was my partner for 2 years. Lauren Aarons was an amazing man, big guy. People used to laugh and joke because when we got out of the squad car, he was 6'6", maybe 305. I was 5'7.5". At that time, $175, $180. And so it was quite comical seeing us get out of the car. But he was just a big teddy bear of a man. And him and 4 fellow Dallas officers and 1 DART officers were killed on that day. Well, a lot of officers had a hard time dealing with that. And prior to that, we had already had a confidential counseling program. But, most cops are those alpha males. So getting them to go seek help or getting them to go talk to a therapist or a counselor of what they deal with every day was very difficult. So we averaged before July 7th, we averaged probably about $60,000 a year in confidential counseling. And at that time, we only provided counseling for the officer. Since then, last year, our confidential counseling program was $173,000. And we offer counseling now to not just the officer, but also to the spouse and to the children, because we finally realized that officers are one of the highest. We're number 2 in profession in suicide. We're number 2 in the profession in addiction and alcohol addiction. And we're actually number 1 in divorce. And so it's a very taxing profession mentally on an officer, and it's very taxing on the social fabric, the family fabric. So we felt we needed to do better. And so we created a stronger confidential counseling. Like I said, I have no idea who goes. We get a bill every month from we have about 11 different therapists, counselors, and child counselors and psychologists. And it's a lot of faith in them and us. And we just pay that bill because I want to make sure that these officers come get help. And we provide that here through the Dallas Police Association, Assist the Officer Foundation. So that's kind of what we do here at the association. We do have a political action committee. We are involved in local and state races. And a lot of that is because we need to make sure that we have a voice, and it's kind of what's kind of going down, as you've seen lately in the past, of the defunding narrative of law enforcement. And I think, unfortunately, nationally, a brand of defunding went across the nation. And I think some of the people that were actually pushing the defunding or the idea of reimagining police officer and law enforcement, it got overtaken by the phrase of defunding, and it carried out throughout the department or throughout the nation, and it came to Texas. And unfortunately, there are some cities that went extreme, like in the city of Austin, who they literally defunded their police department up to $35 million. Where we were a little softer hit to where it was 7 million, which, is still 7 million. But, I think we have to have a voice in local races, and we have to have a voice in state races. So we do have a PAC. Again, this organization is really built about families. It's about taking care of families more than anything. I believe that's my responsibility to take care of these officers. Unfortunately, I've buried 22 officers since I've been on the department, and as president, I've had to hand a flag to eight widows and spouses, and it's probably the hardest thing I've ever had to do in my life, and I hope I never have to do it again. But unfortunately, our job does dictate that there is that fear, and there is that possibility that one of us may not come home every night. So, in saying that, I don't want to be a Debbie Downer, but in saying that, that's really what the Dallas Police Association is about. So if nobody has any questions about that, and please, at any time, if somebody has a question, please just chime in. I'm happy to answer anything that you've read about or any questions you have. I know sometimes every time I do this, there's folks that want to ask about the Amber Geiger trial, and I'm happy to answer anything about that. I am a complete open book.
Mike, I do have a question. We have several.
Sure.
And the first one does have to do with the Dallas Police Association.
Mhm.
This is from Dawnette. She asked, thank you so much for your leadership and service with the DPD. For small police departments like our own University Park or Highland Park, they do not have a police association due to the very small staff. What insight or suggestions are there for a formally organized way to support our Park City's first responders?
Well, they actually probably do. And they don't have probably a local organization, but I'm pretty sure University Park and Highland Park belong to TMPA, which is Texas Municipal Police Association. They're a sister or brother organization to the DPA. But that's a statewide organization that a lot of the littler cities that maybe don't have enough officers or firefighters to actually create their own organization, so they belong to a state organization. And I think to answer your question about supporting them, I'm gonna be honest, and I'm gonna break this down to the most simplistic form. You know, just going up and saying hello. You know, I think this country has become so divided. I think our generational that has come up, you know, and I want to say, you know, I don't want to dog millennials versus Gen Xers and all that, but the worst thing that was ever created, in my opinion, that has separated people or our inability to communicate, unfortunately, is this thing right here. It's this cell phone. And so we've got to the point that it's so much simpler and easier to text that it almost takes away the personality and the personal conversation and interaction that humans need to have to understand each other and to relate. So, and going back to that original question, you know, what you can do to support your police officer or firefighters, and when you see them out, when you see them at, you know, having lunch, or when you see them at a 7-Eleven or wherever, you know, just go up and say thank you. You know, just strike a short conversation, ask them how they are. Not only does it make them feel good, but you're doing us old heads like myself a favor, because you're showing and you're forcing those young officers to engage in those conversations and learn how it is to talk to people again. So obviously, if there's a fundraiser, they're raising money for a good cause, chip in then. But every single day, the best thing you can do is just reach out your hand, shake their hand, if we're allowed to do that still, and say thank you.
Will do. That's great advice. Thank you. Past President Richard would like to know what caused our last chief's time in Dallas to be so short and tumultuous.
Well, that's a great question, and I've actually answered that a couple times in a few conversations as of late since we got our new chief in. You know, I'm going to tell you right now, I went to Detroit to welcome Chief Hall here. Nobody was a bigger supporter and cheerleader for Chief Hall than myself when she was hired. Not so much because of who she was, not so much because she was our first female chief, because we've had 11 other female chiefs. They weren't the chief, but our second in command has been a female chief. We've had dozens of upper command staff that were females and African Americans. So that was not new to this department. It was new as obviously as the chief, but I needed her to succeed because of where this department was. We needed her to succeed. We had to have her to succeed, because if she didn't, then we were going to go farther back than where we already were. And that just wasn't an option for me. So I very rarely does this organization come all out and endorse the chief, because obviously it can get thrown back in your face when they don't succeed. But I felt that we had to. We had to, because she needed to know that we were going to support her, because we have never hired a chief from that far away, from the north, because we're Southerners. And so it was an anomaly to have somebody from Michigan or Wisconsin or New York, somewhere up there, just like it's an anomaly to have Chief Garcia from California. So I wanted to make sure she knew that this organization was going to support her, that this organization was going to do everything we could so that she succeeded. I think, to answer your question, I think what really went south was, unfortunately, as soon as she got here, the first thing she did, she demoted. And when you're coming into a new organization, I'm sure it's just the same in a lot of you guys in the business community. When you come into a new organization, people want to say, well, policing is the same all over the country. Well, that's true. Murder in Texas is pretty much the same as murder in Detroit. Armed robbery is the same in Texas as armed robbery is the same in Michigan. That's true. But the area that you're policing, the neighborhoods that you're policing, the communities that you're working in, the politics that you got to deal with. And trust me when I tell you, the chief of police is a political position. You have to have people surround you that can give you that institutional knowledge. You've got to have people that maybe they wouldn't be the best chief, 4-star chief leader, but they're really good 2-star chiefs or 3-star chiefs. And unfortunately, the two individuals that ran against her, one was Gary Tittle, who is now the chief, is an assistant chief in Richardson. And I heard well on his way to be the chief of Richardson. And the other is Malik Aziz, who was a chief here and is set to be a chief in a couple of cities that he's on a very, very short list. She demoted him. And she demoted him to double demotions. And that is that's unheard of. And I think a lot of it, unfortunately, was because of insecurity. I think Chief Hall, her better move would have been bringing those two individuals in and just sitting them in a room and saying, look, I got picked. I got the job. You didn't get the job. Let's move past that. I know you two guys have a lot of knowledge. I know you two guys actually ranked higher than she did. She was actually number 5 on the final list. Malik was number 2 and Tittle was number 3. But what she should have said is, look, y'all have a lot of talent and I need your talent to succeed. And for y'all to succeed and be chief somewhere else, or in maybe 3 years, 4 years, you might be taking my position when I decide to leave. So if I succeed, you succeed. So let's find a way to work together. Let's succeed together and let's make this city better and this department better. Well, she didn't do that. She double demoted both of them, which was very disturbing to the rank and file, because both those chiefs were very, very well liked. So I think that set a really, really bad tone. I think then she promoted people who were very, very young and did not have that institutional knowledge. And so when it came to fighting crime, they didn't know exactly how to do it. They didn't know what we have done and what we haven't done and what didn't work and what did work. And that kind of put us in the place we're in. I think that the fact that it took her 5 months to get into a uniform hurt morale. I think it hurt her credibility. It's unfortunate that she didn't work out. I think, she believed in transparency, but it's one thing to believe in transparency. It's another thing to do transparency. So when we had the riots here, when we had the protests and a lot of things were done very, very well, but I'm the first to admit a lot of things weren't done well, and some of that is because the far majority of the police department, over 70% of the police department, weren't here in our last time, which was 1995, the last time we had a big riot. So they had never been involved in a situation like that. So she wasn't very transparent. And, you know, the one thing nowadays with social media and everybody's got a camera, every building has a camera on it. You got to make sure what you say is true because they're going to call you on it. And unfortunately, she did get called on it by counsel and she didn't have answers that were good enough. So that kind of led to the demise. But I'm very excited about Chief Garcia. Hopefully most of y'all have seen his interviews on TV. And I think we got it right this time. I do.
If I could, speaking of Chief Garcia, this month's issue of the D magazine has a really nice article and it quotes you, nice quote, that says, even if cops can't totally solve crime, they can damn well reduce it. But someone in charge has to know how. So my question to you is he going to know how?
Well, and that's the thing that is different in contrast. You know, Chief Hall was never the chief of a department. And she came from a city that had a huge reduction in population in the city of Detroit, had a huge reduction in manpower. And so the city size was not near what the Dallas size is. And so, you know, when you're looking at Chief Garcia, you know, it's comparable, although San Jose is the number 10th largest city. We're the number 9th. He has a high Hispanic population where he came from, where there's a high Hispanic population here. He has been in that role as a commander. He was an assistant. He was a deputy assistant, which is second in command there in San Jose for 3 years. And then he was a chief for another 4. So he's had to make those hard decisions. He has had to be in the hot seat. They had the same riots there. They had the same protests there. They had the same issue of businesses being burned. They had the same issues of accusations of improper force with his officers. And he stood up in front of the camera and he answered those hard questions. And so I think he's been tested a little bit more than Chief Hall was. And he has a little more operational experience than Chief Hall had. And so getting back to that quote I made, it's pretty simplistic. You got to know how the cake is made. You got to know how to get there. And, you know, if you've seen a couple of his interviews, and I think it's a huge contrast to where Hall was, is he simply stated he could make the best crime plan ever. It could be, he could be the lead speaker at the International Chief Police Convention about his big crime plan. But if the troops don't believe it, if the troops don't understand it, if the rank and file don't know what our mission is and how we're going to get to our goal, you'll never get there. And that's the problem that Chief Hall had. You could go to any officer throughout the city and ask them, what exactly is our crime plan? What are we trying to achieve? What is the command staff asking of you? And they couldn't tell you. They had no idea. And so I think that's the main difference of what we had and what we're getting. I think Chief Garcia understands that every rank throughout this department, from PO all the way to chief, have to be on the same page. We have to know what our primary goals are. We can't go and try to do 50 things great. We got to try and do 20 things amazing and then move forward from there.
Thank you. Patsy would like to know, first of all, she wants to thank you so much for your service. I really appreciate our officers and the sacrifices made for our city. Have you spent much time with the new police commissioner, and what are your thoughts?
Yeah, actually, since he got the job, we've been talking regularly on the phone. I wanted to make sure he did one thing which was really, really good. As soon as he got hired, I think about 2 days later, he did a video to the troops, introducing himself, thanking them, kind of giving a little bit of his vision. But what he also did, he attached a survey. And it was a very simple survey of about 20 questions. But the difference in this survey to other surveys that have been asked of officers, there wasn't a bubble. There wasn't a, do you agree? Do you strongly agree? Do you not agree? No, it was open-ended. You could type in there exactly what you felt. And we had about about almost 1,000 people respond, which is a pretty large number. So a third of the department actually took the time to respond to that survey. And I know for a fact that he read most of them, if not all of those surveys, because constantly throughout those weeks before he got here, he would call me and say, "Hey, Mike, they're talking about morale. They're talking about these KMPMG shift changes. What exactly is the problem?" Or they have issues with IED. Why are these issues in IED? So he obviously wanted to do his homework, and he wanted to educate himself on what was good and what was bad, what was working, what was not working before he got here, so he could get here running from day one. And the fact that, he also had to do 120 hours of TCOL classes online while he was trying to move, while he was studying for the state exam, so that he could be the chief of police on day one. And I think that was a huge feather in his cap. The fact that on day one, on Wednesday, he was in full police uniform, looking like us, so we can look like him.
That's awesome. That was very impressive. Definitely newsworthy on that. A couple more questions. The next one, we're going to shift gears a little bit. Do you now have social workers who respond with you on domestic violence or mental health calls?
Well, let me touch on that because, we have done community-based policing. The city of Dallas, the Dallas Police Department has been doing community-based policing since Chief Click. And that was back in the 90s. We were the first city that started community-based policing. So all these schools of thought that have come up the last 10 years, we've been doing it forever. We were the benchmark. Cities came to us to ask us how we were doing it. And so when we talk, I'm sorry, Beth, I missed the question.
Oh, back to, do you have social workers who respond with you?
Thank you. I appreciate that. Okay, so the program we have already had it for about 3 years now. So it's called a Signal 46. A Signal 46 is a call for service that is when it's a mental health call. Okay. The problem with the mental health calls is we have no idea what we're walking to. So right now, presently, you have to send 4 officers and a supervisor for every single 46 call. And just so you can kind of put it in perspective, when I worked, because I have to kind of keep track of these. So when I worked Saturday night, just at Northeast Division on deep nights, the 1 a.m. to 9 a.m. shift, we had 11 calls, 11 46 calls. So you got to remember, when you're talking about manpower, that's 11 calls that requires 4 officers and a sergeant. And that's one shift out of 7 shifts, 7 divisions throughout the city, and 5 different watches. So if you look at the manpower that takes into place for every single mental health call, and sometimes the mental health calls are nothing. A lot of times it's something. And just so everybody puts in perspective here, and I have been screaming at council about this for at least 5 years. It is ridiculous that we are sending police officers to these 46 calls, these mental health calls. So, and let me give you a little bit of perspective here. We get called more often than not because somebody is going through a mental episode. They have schizophrenia, they have bipolar, they haven't taken their meds. More often than not, at least 50% of the time, they're agitated, or they're being violent, or they're exhibiting violent tendencies. And so their family, their husband, their wife, their brothers can't deal with them. So they call 911 and the police respond. What can we do? We get 16 hours of training every 2 years on mental health. But even no matter how much you give us, our options are very small. This person is going through an episode. So our only option is to take them to a healthcare facility. Well, to do that, we have to put our hands on them. And if you have anybody within your family that has a mental health issue, and it's bipolar, schizophrenia, or anything like that, it's almost the worst thing you can do is touch them. But we're forced to do so because not only do we have to touch them, we have to handcuff them. And then once we handcuff them, we have to put them in back of a squad car, and you put them in a cage. And people expect something positive to come out of that. Nothing positive is going to come out of that. And so the majority of our officer involved critical incidences are coming out of these situations like this, to where we're forced to engage these individuals who then become violent with us, fight us, and it escalates, and we either tase them or we have to pepper spray them, and it's horrible, and then people videotape it, and then it gets on the internet, and it's never going to look pretty. So in answering your question, we have had a program that actually pairs a paramedic, a firefighter, a social worker to go out to some of these 46s. The problem is they go out to the ones that they know are not violent. So yes, that does help in those situational calls, that it's somebody who just needs attention, counseling, maybe an ambulance to respond, and they're willing to go to a healthcare facility. But that's not the ones that create problems. So, I like to say it this way, that, the government has failed the mental health system. The mental health system has failed the patient, and all of this, the families are stuck in this. And then all of that together has failed public safety, because they ask us to do a job we are not prepared to do, but yet we are forced upon us. And our only option is to use force to get them to calm down, to handcuff them, to put them in the squad car, and then to transport them to the mental health facility. And it doesn't come out with positive outcomes sometimes. So we've got to find a better way. And to be honest with you, the county needs to step up. Mental health is a county problem. It is not a city problem, but the city of Dallas is funding it. And that's what's creating some problems within our budget lines.
Makes sense. That's so sad, Mike, for everyone involved on so many
It
levels.
is. We got to find a better way.
We've got just about 5 more minutes here, and so I've got a couple more questions. We'll start with Amber Geiger trial.
Yeah.
We all follow the media. We read Dallas Morning News. We watch the news. What can you tell us that we need to know?
Well, the first thing I want to say is it was a horrible tragedy. Okay. I've said it in interviews. I've said it on the news. I'll say it here today. I've said it, more times than I can count. If my son, who's 17, grows up to be in the model of Both and Jean, then it is a win. It is a success story for myself and my wife. He was an amazing man and was leading an amazing life. It's unfortunate and it's tragic that what happened, but it was an accident. That officer had worked too long. That officer had worked over 16 hours that day, wasn't paying attention, got off on the wrong floor, went to the wrong door. The doors were painted the same. The hallways looked the same. Even the family is suing the apartment complexes for everything that her defense team said. She was in the wrong place, and she responded incorrectly. And it's unfortunate. It's very unfortunate. And just to talk a little bit, I know I took it on the chin a little bit because I turned off the camera. Well, let me explain that a bit. My job, when I show up, I get called at every officer involved shooting, every single time. Okay. My only job is to maintain that officer independent of anybody else until the attorney gets there. Okay. Because she's already called her attorney. And that's the legal assistance that I spoke of earlier. As soon as I get there, and I have been doing this the exact same way, following policy and procedure the exact same way for the last 7 years that I've been going to these officer-involved incidents and these officer-involved shootings. The first thing I do is I go straight up to the command staff and I ask them, is this an officer-involved shooting? If they say yes, then I know the exact protocol that I'm supposed to follow, because I don't ask them what happened. I don't ask the officer what happened. I don't want to know. It's not my job to know. I'm not there investigating the crime. I'm there as the president of the police association just to make sure that she has legal representation. That's it. And so if they tell me it's an officer involved shooting, I have an exact protocol that I handle it by. If they tell me no, it's not an officer involved shooting, then I tell the officer that she's going to have to get her own attorney. We provide her an attorney for consultation, but after that, the officer is going to have to provide their own attorney. So once I went up to him and asked them that question, and there was 2 stars, a 1 star, a major, and a lieutenant who all said the same thing. Yes, this is an officer involved shooting. I handled it the same. And so I knew for a fact, because I had just gotten off the phone with her attorney, that her attorney was going to be calling her. Well, just like with every other citizen, if a citizen invokes their right to counsel, it is illegal, against the law, to record their conversations. So knowing that the attorney was going to call her, I had an obligation to protect the integrity of the investigation and have the in-car camera turned off. Now you got to remember, the cameras, she didn't have a body camera. The cameras are on to preserve the evidence of a crime scene. The crime scene was 300 yards away and 4 floors up. The crime scene was nowhere near that squad car. And the only thing that was going to happen inside that squad car was the conversation between her and her attorney, which is attorney-client privilege. And so I had not only a duty to her to protect her rights, I had to protect the integrity of the investigation. Because remember, anything gained out of that, if used in the investigation, was going to throw the case out. So that was my main responsibility. And I know it looked bad on TV, but they knew exactly what was going on. And I thought it was very disingenuous for the DA Hermes to put that in trial, knowing good and well that dozens and dozens of other shootings that have came across his desk, we have done the exact same thing. His own investigative team was out there that night at the scene, and they had absolutely no problem with it. He did it specifically to bring disparagement and put a black eye on the Dallas Police Association and DPD. And I thought it was very unfair. So, and that's why I said, when I got on TV and interviewed, I said, I welcome an investigation. By all means, please do it. And they did do it. And I was found that I didn't do anything. I was no billed by this city, and I was completely exonerated by this department. So, again, it's a horrible, horrible event. I wish it had never happened. I wish Bothanji was still walking the streets today. As a department, we need to learn things out of that. We need to be better at being transparent. And you know what? I've been yelling at the city for the longest time, this department. Stop trying to hide things from the people. Even if they don't agree with you, at least give them the opportunity to understand. Maybe they will, and maybe they won't, but you did your part. And as a department, we have failed in doing that in the past.
Well, thank you for that. I appreciate that, as I know all of the members here do. I've got just one final comment for you, and then we're going to conclude our meeting. We try to wrap up by 1. Zach would like to thank you, and more broadly, all of the first responders for your service. Great meeting today, and thank you for presenting.
Thank you very much. And again, like I've told other places, I'm willing to go anywhere, any place, anytime, and have a constructive conversation about anything, because I think that is what is majorly lacking in the trust between the police and the community. And overall, in our society of itself, is looking each other in the face, humanizing each other, realizing it's okay not to agree, but it's not okay to yell and scream at each other. So I look forward to great things coming out of this police department in the near future.
We do too. It is an exciting change, and we all pray for Chief Garcia that it is a success for everyone. You'd make a great Rotarian. You speak the values we speak, and it was a real honor having you here today.
I might just take you up on that.
There you go. There you go. Well, in that light, Mike, we're going to put a book in the Preston Hollow Elementary School in your honor.
All right, fantastic. Thank you very much, guys. I appreciate you having me.
Oh, it was great. Well, next week, we're going to hear from Amy Lewis Hoffland. She's with the Crow Museum of Asian Arts. And thank you, Bill Sleeper, for being our chair of the day. We are going to conclude this meeting. I want to wish everyone a very great weekend ahead. We'll see you next Friday. Let's conclude the meeting by reciting our 4-way test. First are the things we think, say, or do. Is it the truth? Is it fair to all concerned? Will it build goodwill and better friendships? And will it be beneficial to all concerned? Thank you all, and have a great weekend, and we'll see you back here next week. Bye-bye. Great. Okay. All right, we're going to end the meeting for all.